The Renegade Mission. Chapter 1. The Outcasts of Xylos. The recycled air hummed stale in Cira's cramped apartment, a constant reminder of her place on the fringes of Xylos's glittering metropolis. Moonlight, filtered through the grime-coated sky dome, cast an unwelcome spotlight on the exposed wires snaking across her workbench. Here, amidst the discarded tech and flickering monitors, Cira tinkered with a salvaged comm unit, her violet vines weaving intricate patterns around the device. A low growl rumbled from the doorway. Akoni Kai, her ever-present shadow, filled the frame. His skin, a canvas of textured green moss, seemed to absorb the moonlight, making him appear even larger than his imposing stature. "Newsfeed's buzzing," Akoni grunted, his voice a low tremor. "Another dust-up at the western fringe." Cira didn't look up. Same story, different day. The comm unit sputtered back to life, a distorted image flickering on the screen. A young woman with panicked eyes filled the view. "This is Dr. Lena from Xylos Research Facility B7. We're under attack. Prototype containment breached. Symbiote outbreak." The transmission died abruptly, replaced by static. Cira's breath hitched. Xylos Research B7 housed the most controversial projects, those tinkering with the very essence of the cilia, the bioluminescent flora that had become an integral part of Xylos society. A cold dread settled in her stomach. She slammed the comm unit down, the metallic clang echoing in the small space. Akoni's moss-covered brow furrowed. "Research facility, huh? Not exactly our turf, Vex." Cira met his gaze, her violet eyes flashing with a suppressed intensity. "Dr. Vargas," she said, the name a bitter taste on her tongue. "They said it was a prototype containment breach. Who else messes with weaponizing Xylia?" Akoni remained silent, his jaw clenched. Dr. Vargas, a renegade scientist ostracized for his radical ideas, was a ghost that haunted both their pasts. Cira, different from most on Xylos with her powerful violet vines, had been deemed a threat in her youth. Akoni, ostracized for the sheer density and resilience of his moss symbiosis, had faced similar prejudice. "We can't just ignore it," Cira pressed, her voice laced with a quiet urgency. "Someone's got to clean up their mess, right?" Akoni snorted. "And who better than the rejects, the freaks, the—" He trailed off, a flicker of pain crossing his features. Cira understood the sting of those words all too well, yet a spark of defiance ignited within her. "Exactly," she said, her voice firm. "Maybe this is our chance to prove them wrong." A long silence stretched between them. Akoni's gaze flickered to the comm unit, then back to Cira. In his deep green eyes, she saw a flicker of something akin to grudging respect. "All right, Vex," he finally rumbled. "Let's go see what kind of mess Dr. Vargas cooked up this time." A faint hum emanated from Cira's wrist, a signal from Dr. Anya Sharma, their team's tech expert and reluctant leader. Anya, with her hidden past and quiet brilliance, was the glue that held their ragtag group together. Cira glanced at the flickering cityscape visible through the grimy window. Xylos, a city that thrived on the symbiotic bond with the Xylia, now seemed to cast a cold, judgmental eye on them. But tonight, they were more than just outcasts. Tonight, they were the only hope standing between Xylos and a potential catastrophe. Chapter 2. The Renegade Mission. The dilapidated hovercraft sputtered to life, its rusty hull groaning in protest. Cira gripped the controls, her violet vines pulsing faintly in rhythm with the engine's erratic thrum. Beside her, Akoni sat hunched, his mossy arms crossed over his chest. The silence in the cramped cockpit was thick with tension. "You still think this is a good idea, Vex?" Akoni rumbled, his voice laced with suspicion. "Research B7 doesn't exactly have a welcoming committee for the likes of us." Cira kept her gaze fixed on the holographic map projected above the control panel. "We can't ignore a distress call, Akoni, especially one from B7. "Maybe it's a trap," Akoni countered, his voice gruff. "Vargas wouldn't be above setting us up." The name hung heavy in the air. Dr. Vargas, the ostracized scientist, was a constant reminder of their place on the fringes of Xylos society. Cira, different from most due to her potent violet vines, and Akoni, ostracized for his dense, resilient moss symbiosis, both bore the scars of prejudice. "We may be outcasts," Cira said, her voice firm, But we're also the only ones who can handle this. Our symbiosis might be the key. Ikoni snorted. Symbiosis or a giant target for whatever Vargas cooked up this time? Cira glanced at the back of the hovercraft, where Dr. Anya Sharma sat hunched over a flickering datapad. Anya, their tech expert, and the glue that held their ragtag group together, remained silent, her brow furrowed in concentration. Just then Anya's head snapped up. "I might have something," she announced, her voice laced with a hint of urgency. Anya tapped a few controls, and a holographic image materialized in the air. A grainy schematic depicting a monstrous, vaguely plant-like creature pulsating with a malevolent red glow. Cira's breath hitched. "What is that?" "A prototype weaponized symbiote," Anya explained, her voice grim. "According to our source inside B7, Dr. Vargas managed to create a self-sustaining organism fueled by rage and violence." Ikoni let out a low growl. "So much for Vargas not being above setting us up. This thing sounds like a walking invitation to disaster." A cold dread settled in Cira's stomach. The very idea of a weaponized symbiote was horrifying. The Xylia, a source of life and connection for their society, twisted into a tool of destruction. Yet a flicker of something else sparked within her, a sense of responsibility. "We can't let this thing get loose," Cira said, her voice gaining conviction. "Someone has to stop it. And who better than us?" Ikoni met her gaze, his mossy brow furrowed. He didn't speak, but Cira saw a flicker of something akin to reluctant agreement in his eyes. "All right, Vex," he finally rumbled. "Let's see what kind of mess Dr. Vargas cooked up this time. But if things go south," he added, his voice hardening, "we're leaving you to deal with the cleanup." Cira grinned, a spark of defiance lighting up her violet eyes. "Wouldn't have it any other way, Kai." With a shared nod, they focused their attention back on the holographic map. Xylos Research B7 loomed ahead, a dark silhouette against the luminous cityscape. Tonight, the outcasts of Xylos were on a collision course with a potential disaster, and the fate of their city might just rest on their shoulders. Chapter 3. The Heart of the Beast. Xylos Research B7 loomed in the distance, a stark concrete monolith bristling with automated security turrets. Under the dim glow of the moon, its imposing silhouette held an ominous air. Cira piloted the hovercraft with practiced ease, her violet vines pulsing faintly as they navigated the facility's perimeter. "Looks like a fortress," Ikoni rumbled from the passenger seat, his voice laced with a hint of nervousness. Vargas always did have a taste for the dramatic. Cira didn't answer. Her senses, heightened by the symbiosis, scanned the landscape. Thermal signatures flickered through the darkness, betraying the presence of patrolling security drones. With a flick of her wrist, she activated the cloaking field woven into the hovercraft's hull. The metallic outlines shimmered, fading into the shadows. Suddenly, a shrill alarm pierced the night. A red spotlight slammed into the invisible hovercraft, momentarily revealing their position. "We've been spotted!" Anya's voice crackled over the comm system. Cira reacted instinctively, throwing the hovercraft into a series of sharp turns, evading the barrage of laser fire aimed their way. The cloaking field flickered precariously, threatening to fail under the onslaught. "We need to land, Cira!" Ikoni shouted over the cacophony. "We can't keep this up!" Cira scanned their surroundings, her eyes landing on a narrow crevice in the facility's outer wall. With a daring maneuver, she piloted the craft into the opening, the hull scraping against the rough concrete. Dust billowed as they landed, the cloaking field collapsing completely. They were inside. Adrenaline surged through Cira's veins. The air hung heavy with the metallic tang of ozone and the faint scent of burnt circuitry. They emerged from the mangled hovercraft, their cloaking suits activated, blending them into the shadows. "This way," Anya whispered, leading them through a maze of deserted corridors. "There's a maintenance access tunnel leading towards the core lab." Their path wasn't easy. Laser grids crisscrossed the corridors, and automated defense bots patrolled the halls. Ikoni, his moss symbiosis granting him enhanced strength, plowed through the bots with a series of bone-crunching blows. Cira's violet vines whipped out, expertly disarming security lasers and flinging debris to create diversions. Anya, nimble and quick, weaved through the chaos, her datapad glowing as she hacked into the facility's security systems. Finally, they reached the main door leading to the core lab. A holographic security field shimmered in front of them, an imposing barrier. Anya tapped furiously at her datapad, frustration etched on her face. "It's not working," she exclaimed. "The security protocols are locked down tight." Just then, a metallic groan echoed through the corridor. The main doors were warping inwards, revealing a figure clad in a lab coat, his face obscured by the darkness. "Dr. Vargas?" Cira breathed, her voice cold. The figure stepped into the light, a twisted smile playing on his lips. His once pristine lab coat was singed and ripped, and a manic glint shone in his eyes. "Ah, the rejects," Dr. Vargas chuckled, a humorless sound. "Come to witness the culmination of my work." A low growl emanated from behind him. An enormous, vaguely plant-like creature emerged, pulsating with an angry red glow. Its tendrils writhed, and razor-sharp leaves glinted in the dim light. Cira's blood ran cold. This was the weaponized symbiote, a perversion of the life-giving Xylia. It was monstrous, a symbol of everything Dr. Vargas had become, consumed by rage and ambition. Dr. Vargas threw his head back and let out a manic laugh. "Behold the power of a weaponized symbiote! You can't stop progress, not even you freaks!" With a guttural roar, the monstrous symbiote lunged. The fight for Xylos' future had just begun. Chapter 4. Echoes of the Past. The monstrous symbiote roared, a sound that rattled the very foundations of the lab. A coney, a blur of green resilience, wrestled with one of its writhing tendrils. His face contorted in pain as the symbiote's malevolent energy seeped into his moss-covered skin, turning the vibrant green a sickly yellow. Cira lunged forward, her violet vines whipping out in a desperate attempt to restrain the creature. But the symbiote, fueled by Dr. Vargas's twisted vision, was a force of raw power. Her vines snapped under the strain, the raw energy of the creature sending her flying across the room with a sickening thud. Pain lanced through Cira's shoulder as she hit the ground. Panic clawed at her throat, but she forced it down, focusing on the faint bioluminescent glow emanating from her own symbiosis. They were outmatched, overpowered, but as she stared at the monstrous creature, a horrifying realization dawned on her. The pulsating red core of the symbiote wasn't just radiating rage, it thrummed with a deep-seated pain, a twisted reflection of Dr. Vargas's own ostracized existence. A memory surfaced from Cira's childhood, the fear in her parents' eyes as they shielded her from the scornful stares of the community, the loneliness that gnawed at her during her years as an outcast. A pang of empathy lanced through her. The symbiote wasn't inherently evil. It was a warped mirror reflecting the darkness Dr. Vargas had been forced to carry. With a newfound resolve, Cira closed her eyes, focusing on the bioluminescent glow within her. She wasn't reaching out with violence, but with a silent plea, an offering of understanding. A faint tendril of violet light pulsed outwards, reaching for the pulsating red core of the symbiote. The room held its breath as the two tendrils met, a single point of contact amidst the chaos. A surge of emotions, rage, fear, loneliness, flooded Cira's senses. It was overwhelming, a glimpse into the warped reality of the symbiote's existence. But beneath the cacophony, she sensed a flicker of something else, a yearning for acceptance, a mirror of her own past struggles. Tears welled up in Cira's eyes. In that moment, she didn't see a monstrous weapon, but a reflection of her own ostracized existence. The answer wasn't brute force, but empathy. In a voice choked with emotion, she spoke, not to Dr. Vargas, but to the tormented essence within the symbiote. "We all just want to belong," she whispered, her voice barely audible above the low hum of the facility. The symbiote pulsed, a flicker of uncertainty replacing the raw rage that had fueled its movements. Dr. Vargas, a crazed look in his eyes, sputtered in outrage. "What are you doing? Destroy it!" he shrieked, his voice dripping with venom. Cira ignored him, her focus solely on the connection she was forging. The tendrils of light, violet and red, intertwined further. The room seemed to hold its breath, the only sound the ragged gasps escaping Okone's lips as he fought the symbiote's influence. A faint tremor ran through the lab. The symbiote's tendrils twitched, the red glow flickering erratically. Slowly, the creature's monstrous form began to shrink, the pulsating core dimming. Relief washed over Cira, but it was tinged with a sense of unease. What had she done? As the light subsided, a single human figure remained. Dr. Vargas, his shoulders slumped in defeat. The monstrous symbiote was gone, replaced by a man broken by his own ostracization. The silence in the lab was deafening. Cira knew their fight was far from over. The true challenge had just begun. How to heal the wounds of an outcast in the city that had ostracized him. Chapter 5, Symphony of Vines. An uneasy silence hung heavy in the air. Dr. Vargas stood before them, a defeated figure stripped of his manic rage. The monstrous symbiote was gone, replaced by a faint red glow emanating from his chest, a testament to the tenuous connection Cira had forged. Oconee, his moss symbiosis slowly regaining its vibrant green, watched Dr. Vargas with narrowed eyes, the remnants of the battle etched on his face. Cira, her violet vines pulsing faintly, approached Dr. Vargas with cautious steps. The air crackled with a tension that transcended the physical. She reached out, not with a weapon, but with an open hand. "It's over, Dr. Vargas," she said, her voice soft but firm. "The rage, the destruction, it doesn't have to define you." Dr. Vargas flinched at her touch, but didn't pull away. A flicker of something akin to shame flickered in his eyes. Years of ostracization and bitterness seemed to weigh him down. Suddenly, the faint red glow emanating from Dr. Vargas intensified. A surge of energy pulsed through the room, coursing through Cira's violet vines. A gasp escaped her lips as she realized the symbiote wasn't resisting, but cooperating. With a surge of shared bioluminescent energy, Cira's vines lashed out, not with violence, but with purpose. They wrapped around the remaining prototype weaponry, the symbiote's energy overloading the systems, rendering them inert. Sparks flew, alarms blared, but the threat was neutralized. A tremor shook the lab and a gasp rippled through the group. Above them, the ceiling panels cracked, revealing a breathtaking sight. The bioluminescent network that pulsed beneath Xylos City, a web of xylia connecting every building and every citizen, had somehow resonated with the calm symbiote. A symphony of light erupted. Violet tendrils of Cira's symbiosis intertwined with Dr. Vargas's red glow, reaching out and connecting with the xylia network above. The entire lab became bathed in an ethereal glow, a mesmerizing display of the true potential of symbiosis. From the observation deck, a group of scientists watched in stunned silence. They had come expecting to witness the unveiling of a weapon, but instead they were witnessing a revelation. The very essence of Xylian life, the symbiotic bond they had taken for granted, was pulsing with a breathtaking beauty. News of the incident spread like wildfire through Zylos. The Renegades, once outcasts, became an overnight sensation. The stunning display of the calm symbiote, resonating with the Xylia network, sparked a fierce debate about societal prejudice. Was ostracizing those with unique symbiosis truly serving Xylos? Cira, Oconee, and Anya found themselves thrust into the spotlight. Interviews flooded their makeshift headquarters, their faces plastered across news feeds. They were hailed as heroes, symbols of a new understanding. But amidst the celebration, Cira remained grounded. The fight for acceptance wouldn't be easy. Centuries of prejudice wouldn't vanish overnight. Yet as she looked at the vibrant cityscape bathed in the afterglow of the symbiote's connection, a flicker of hope ignited within her. Perhaps, just perhaps, Xylos was finally ready to embrace the true symphony of its existence, the harmonious bond between humans and symbiotes.